Good evening, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Molly's Salon. This is our weekly program every Thursday evening where I interview innovative thinkers and creative firebrands. And these firebrands are a variety of artists and leaders discussing new ideas, how they're coping with the coronavirus, and glimmers of hope for the future. But if you haven't heard about Arena Stage's world premiere online feature docudrama, please check it out. May 22nd, 2020 captures a day in the life of Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia residents ages 18 to 89, a real look at their lives through monologues in the time of COVID-19. It's hyperlocal. We used all artists from the Washington area, and there are monologues about a beekeeper, a climate change activist, a DC police detective, a nurse on a COVID ward. It's online now. So go to arenastage.org to watch the 55-minute film. Tonight's guests are Wendy C. Goldberg, Artistic Director of the National Playwrights Conference at the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center, and Robert Raben, President and founder of the Raben Group. Wendy is currently in her 11th season as Artistic Director of the National Playwrights Conference at the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center. She's the first woman to lead the conference in its 50-year history. Under her tenure, the O'Neill was awarded the 2010 Regional Tony Award, the first play development and education organization to receive this honor. Wendy's overseen the development of more than 90 projects for the stage, and there she is. I don't know how many of you know this, but Wendy started as an artistic director intern at Arena Stage, and I was fortunate to work with Wendy early in her career, and then as artistic associate for 5 seasons. You would have seen productions of hers like Proof, that's on the wall behind her, The Goat, or Who is Sylvie, and also K2. So it's so exciting to have you on tonight, Wendy. It's great to see you.
It is so good to see you, Molly. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's just dig right in. I have a big, interesting question for you because, Wendy, I'll bet it was an honor to head up the Pulitzer Committee for Drama. And so many of us find this a mysterious process for any of the Pulitzers. And so without revealing anything you're not supposed to reveal, if you could talk to us about the process of the committee, I think it'd be fascinating for people.
Oh, absolutely. It was, first of all, you're right. It was a huge honor. It was absolutely something that I'd always hoped to do and was fortunate enough to get the opportunity this year to do it. It's interesting because probably what a lot of people don't know is that you can submit your own material for consideration. So there's actually an open submission process. So if you have had a production of a play in the last year, so for us, we were looking, it was awarded in 2020, but we were looking at the year 2019. So anything that opened before the end of the year is essentially what we were looking at. And so you can submit it. You can go to the Pulitzer website and you can put the material in. So that, I think, is something that a lot of people don't know. And so obviously a lot of really eclectic material from all over the country comes in from productions. And that's really the only thing that has to have happened. It's had to have professional production. And then obviously the committee is put together kind of halfway through the year. And so the committee tends to represent different parts of the country. And so it's primarily journalists, and then you have 1 or 2 artists on the panel, or artistic curators, producers, those sorts of types. And the idea is, like, for the most part, we've covered the country. We've seen a lot, we've read a lot, and anything that we feel like should be considered, we can discuss, and make sure that it gets submitted. And typically all of the major companies make sure, here in New York and then elsewhere around the country, make sure that their new works are in and have been submitted. So that's sort of how it begins. And that's, and that's how it goes essentially for all of the categories too. So all of the experts that are looking at the work for, from poetry to nonfiction to music, they're all looking at material that's been kind of sent through the through the system and then adding to it and looking around. And so it's great. So I was on a really interesting committee of journalists, and kind of a spread between here, and we had someone from the Twin Cities was on the committee too, from the paper there. And so we all do a ton of reading, we do a ton of thinking, and then we gather and we figure out our recommendations, come to consensus and figure out our recommendations that we then actually submit to the next sort of level up, which is the award administrator and the board. And the board, they sit down over a weekend and they figure out, if they want to go with our recommendations or if they want to make a change or something. But what was really also really fascinating this year was that we were the last major award adjudicated in person in New York. And we did it on the very beginning of March. And then by the next Monday, we did it on a Friday, and we came to conclusions. And on Monday, New York was shut down, and Columbia University is where it takes place. So that was shut down almost around us as it was all happening. And we take great pride in the fact that, the award itself was going, we were the last jury to meet. And so our award was going to be given probably within a month from that time to have a whole, ceremony and everything. And that obviously couldn't happen. But I really applaud the Pulitzers because they were also one of the first to go online and to do the award ceremony and feeling like, let's not honor this moment and these artists. So that sort of kicked off the beginning of virtual, award shows, I think, for this last season.
So Wendy, this is just a nitty gritty question, but how many plays are submitted every year? And how many plays do you in the committee need to read? Because I don't think people get the scale of
No, I know, hundreds, hundreds. I mean, again, it can be, what limits it is the fact that it have to have a production. So, at the O'Neill that I run, that is a development organization. So we're looking at material that has not had a production yet. So we get even more material because it could be a lot of different things that haven't yet been produced. But in this case, there is a finite amount, but it's hundreds. You're definitely looking at a lot of work. And then we all sort of are this brain trust, and we say, did you see this? Who saw this? What did you think of this? And I'll also say, just as somebody who spends a lot of time, on the other side of journalism and not necessarily collaborating with journalists and critics. I mean, they're all critics that I was working with. I think it's been really great to have a chance to talk to everybody really frankly. And, just even last year I served with Peter Marks from the Washington Post, and, I got to know him in a way that I'd rather know him that way, than him reviewing things without, so it's been really kind of a cool experience, and I think unique experience for somebody who spends a lot of time getting critical feedback in that way.
That's great. That's great. So talk about how the O'Neill is coping in this troubled time and what's happening in Connecticut.
Sure.
Where are you? Are you going online with your programming? What are you doing?
So we are, and we were kind of the last holdout of the summer programs, I think, to make a choice and to we really were hopeful, that we could be in person, and we kind of just kept, and so much of what we do makes so much sense in person. So we were hoping that maybe we could do that. And then I was on a kind of small committee of colleagues, Williamstown, New York Stage and Film, all producing and development organizations in our region. And we were all talking our way through this. And we decided that we were going to try to develop work online as much as we can. A lot of the things that we feel limited by in this sort of virtual realm, we're hopeful that we can have those artists back, when we can gather. And so I will have to say I'm very proud of everybody, because every program has worked together to create some sort of programming. And it, as you well know, it's like we're running a small television streaming service, and we're all remotely working. No one's actually in their office. Everyone's in their house and everything. So I do like that collaboration. I mean, that's been really thrilling and scary. We all, we don't know what we're doing half the time, but I think that just like you, we're trying to do we're doing some really interesting public programming. And I should just say, if you hit our website, it's www.theo'neill.org. There's a number of these sorts of conversations with artists, and I think some special moments with intimate moments with artists that you wouldn't necessarily get. And we are actually featuring a number of artists who've come through the O'Neill, who've either won the Pulitzer or been a finalist. That's one of the things we're doing in the Playwrights Conference.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great, Wendy. So how are you and the O'Neill Theater Center responding to We See You, White America theater post?
Yeah. You know, again, I'm very proud of everybody who's been a part of what we're doing internally. I think that with everything happening, you know, specific to that statement, specific to the racial upheaval, and just, you know, all of our desire for social justice right now, we have been doing a lot of listening. We've also been doing a lot of reading. You know, we've done a number of anti-racist behavior training sessions, and we've gotten the board involved in that too. We have like a real action plan, I think. You know, we acknowledge where we sit within all of it, I think, and we're trying to do better and move forward. But there's a lot of work to be done, and I think that the good news is I will really give it up to some of my kind of, I'll say, you know, younger colleagues who have really been in the trenches on the writing of things and the thinking about things. And we're trying to save space for everyone to talk. So, you know, it's the other huge piece of this is everyone's so disconnected right now because we're just not physically together. So we're trying to make space where we can talk through how we're feeling or what we're doing. And so, you know, we're kind of moving into an action plan now. And I think that there's going to be more from us soon. I feel like we also, you know, put a statement out, but mainly we're doing a lot of work internally, I think, to just kind of look at who we are, what our practices have been, and how we can get better.
In the midst of the pandemic, I think one of the things that has happened is people have gone internal, so that it's become a really thoughtful time for artists or for people who are historians. But I also think it's just everyone is thinking through their lives, their relationships with people, their relationships with family. And so having this time in the middle of the George Floyd murder and protests around police brutality and systemic racism in this country, it ends up being ideal as a time when people are really thinking, feeling, and eventually taking action. I'm curious, Wendy, because you're a mom.
Yes.
And you both have a beautiful little boy, Max, who I think just is in what, third, fourth grade?
He just finished his fourth grade virtual day today. Yeah.
I love it.
I know.
I love it. How are you redefining your art in this time, Wendy? I see we only have a couple minutes left.
Sure. Well, I will say that's true, that there's been a lot of focus here on our family and a lot of thinking about what we want, you know, the next chapter to look like. And, you know, when you really sort of strip it down and it's just about being safe and healthy and also like looking at the world in a very, you know, from our perspective right now and seeing everything that's happening. And we're at the epicenter of both, you know, the pandemic here in New York, as well as many actions, social actions right now. And so, you know, we're trying to be as involved as we can be and take care of ourselves within all of that. But I think artistically, the thing that I have been really feeling is that for the last couple of years, I've been sort of attempting to do more work in various virtual realms and not just, you know, in 3D. And so I'm looking forward to, like, there's so many things that we're missing about what we do as theater artists right now, but there's also, I think, a lot we can learn from this time, and in terms of how we make it work when we get back into a room and a space together, but also how we can continue to work in these realms too. And so I'm thinking a lot about that. And that's why I was so excited to see what you're doing at Arena, because I think you're one of the early adopters. Like, you got in there, and that's exactly how I feel too. It's like we have to keep creating and making, and And this is sort of what we have right now. And it's actually a really good tool. It's not great for everything, but it's good for a lot of things. And I think that it's worth our time to invest in it. And it's going to be worth our time to invest in actually filming our productions in a really good way, like Stratford, and just start working with everybody to do that. So when and if this happens again, we have content that comes from our theaters that we feel really strong about streaming and all of that. And I think we can, I think if we had it all, we would have been able to work it and show it. We just don't have it. So
Yeah.
it'll be great to see that happen in the future too.
Yeah, well, it's going to be fun to follow you and see where you are innovating at the O'Neill. And congratulations, Wendy, on all your great work there.
Thanks,
And
Mom.
next time, let's see each other in the flesh.
I love it. Perfect. Thank you so much. Take
Bye-bye,
care,
Wendy.
Lucy. Bye.
Bye. Take care. And my next guest is Robert Raben and his unique public policy firm, which he created in 2002. It works to drive public policy in a humane and sensible direction to bring diversity and equity to the boardrooms and think tanks and corporations of America, to create a fair judiciary and to influence legislation that will broaden civil rights, reform our criminal justice system, and improve education for our children. And Robert has been an attorney, a congressional staffer in Barney Frank's office, Democratic counsel for 2 subcommittees of the House Judiciary Committee, and notably as Principal Deputy Assistant Attorney General and subsequently Assistant Attorney General, Office of Legislative Affairs. Amazing career, Robert. I'd say
Of our titles in Washington.
it's a lot. Well, this is a pretty heady time to be driving public policy. And I'm curious if you could talk to us about what the top 3 priorities of the Raben Group are right now.
Staying safe. First, thank you for having me on. And I sort of want to yield my time, as we say in Washington, to Wendy. That was really, really awesome to listen to her and to see the arc of sort of a protege of yours really changing the world. So thank you. Thank you for having her and allowing me to follow that. The top 3 priorities, that's a great question. I would say staying safe, that ultimately every work site that cares is an amalgam of people with stresses and pressures and families and their own well-being, and that has to come first. It's hard to remember that when you're in the pressure of performing, but staying safe. Second, the vast majority of our clients are involved in social justice, criminal justice reform, anti-sex trafficking, reproductive rights. We take on some of the hard stuff. We're probably the only public policy firm in the nation with clients on death row. Figuring out how the pandemic, how the exposure by the pandemic of the incredible inequities are in this country, education, distance learning, everything. How this is an opportunity for us to go deeper to educate people about how the inequities came about, and what if the federal government is going to be doing massive redistribution of resources, which they are, through these stimuli packages, how we can try to reduce some of these inequities. And the third, I think, is storytelling, which is why I'm excited to be on the same screen as you. For years in public policy, most of us focused on facts, evidence-based, get the research, where's the paper, the facts show. And in an era in which facts have a diminishing role in public discourse, there's a group of us who are going to sort of fight back and say facts matter, and I support that. And then there's another group of us who are going to say, well, if facts are less important, what's going to replace them? And this is where art and storytelling and imagery become even more crucial. So at Raben, we're very, very focused in trying to go deeper in how people are moved. Passion, imagery, narrative, storytelling, art. So those are the 3 things.
I love it. I'm gonna stick with storytelling for a moment because it's a great segue into your work, where you founded the March on Washington Film Festival in 2013 to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. And I came to your film festival probably a year ago, and it's really, really remarkable. And I would love for you to talk about it. And I have a follow-up question, but talk about it, because that's, you're telling stories through the film medium.
Oh my gosh, I'd like to cut this interview off right now because Molly Smith just said that a film festival I'm involved in is remarkable. So my work is done. Thank you. Thank you. It's really a passion project. I'm a public policy person. I'm a lawyer. I'm in the business of shifting power. I'm really not, I got no business running a film festival, which is why we've turned it over to artistic directors and producers who know what they're doing. It turned into a festival. At first, it was to try to bring to life stories that weren't being told. I had accompanied Congressman John Lewis to a yearly trip that he makes to Alabama every spring, and he sort of walks you through what happened. And I saw in the churches and on the bridge and in the streets 60, 70, 80-year-olds, and I was obsessed with, what's your story? We hear about Rosa Parks, we hear about Dr. King. If you go to that school, you learned about Malcolm X. Most of us didn't. What's your story? And so we came back, and a few of us said, well, let's put some films together, documentary film. And what we learned right away, many of your audience members know this, the history of this country is consciously and relentlessly mistold for all kinds of reasons we could talk about in a larger conversation. The textbooks, the educational system, how our history, not just the civil rights era, but all of it, the role of women, the role of people of color, all of it is grossly distorted. But what we've really created is a national platform for first-person storytelling, and sometimes it's second-person because many of these people are no longer with us. Tell us your story. Art, scholarship, narrative, film, step, textiles. Tell us your story and connect it to the now. We are focused on students, and we want them to learn your story, but we want them to walk away and say, what's my civil right? So it's just exploded. It's thousands of audience goers, incredible curation. Now people come to us with an idea and we're able to produce it, and it's a real blessing, but it needs to be in every classroom. The number of stories out there that people walk away and say, why didn't I know that? Is off the charts.
Robert, how do you then take this and combine it with public policy? And what you were just saying about, you know, facts are not important for some people. Storytelling is important. But how do you take those two entities together? Because there is a marriage there, and there is a way to take information that might have been unpalatable before, and yet in a storytelling form, it sticks. We get it.
Absolutely. If you're trying to get money for Title IX for women in sports, and you're able to connect with an audience that wasn't inclined to think about it, policymakers, staff on the Hill, and you show them the story of Althea Gibson and how both as a woman and an African American, she trailblazed through victory in tennis, although she played multiple sports. And you're able to, around the film, bring in the tennis team, the women's tennis team at Howard University, and have them have a conversation with policymakers on the Appropriations Committee. That's a very direct connection. I'll tell you a really quick story, something that I learned, and maybe your audience knows it. Fannie Lou Hamer, most of you should know. And you know she made an incredible speech at the 1964 Democratic Convention, which began to open up the Democratic Party, and the result of which is Barack Obama. What you don't know, because it's not taught, is she went back to Mississippi, and she and two other Black women ran for Congress. The Democratic Party and the Republican Party wouldn't let them on the ballot. They ran a parallel election. They got tens of thousands of votes. Nobody would seat them. They came to Congress in January of '65 and demanded to be seated. There was a 7-month trial in Congress about whether to seat these three women. It was 4 years before Shirley Chisholm. This is not taught anywhere in the United States. We brought the families of these three women to Congress. We taught the Congressional Black Caucus about this story. We're now working on a project to reenact the trial, to commemorate what would have been historic. They would have been the first Black women to be on the floor of the House or Senate in the United States. This is in living memory.
Wow.
The number of stories we don't know is incredible, and the ability to connect the story to public policy is infinite.
That's so beautiful. You always feel to me as if you have this amazing optimism tempered by steel. And I'm very curious about where you're finding joy these days in the middle of COVID-19.
I have dozens of finger puppets on my desk at work. And whenever I see floor debates, my optimism is the following. We're definitely at an inflection point. Enormous numbers of Americans are pushed into a conversation that was a long time coming. My cynical side says, hey, if Emmett Till didn't do it for you, why this? But I'm watching before my eyes tens of millions of people willing to have a conversation that was too stilted in the past. If NASCAR takes down a Confederate flag, something's going on. Do I think there will be significant systemic change? No, not alone. It takes millions of people making change. I'm extremely optimistic about the young talent, activists, artists, public policy people that come out whenever we have crisis, whether it's in the streets of Ferguson or now the protests that are going on. There is an amazing cohort of young people who show up. They have a vision. They fight with older people. Everybody says that they're going about it the wrong way. And they turn out to be the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortezes and the Hakeem Jeffries. And there you have it, the next generation of leadership. That is always extremely inspiring to me.
I agree. I agree. Really, really inspiring. You know, Robert, as we see things like the hangings of men around this country being deemed suicide when we know that they are lynchings, what do you say as a lawyer? I mean, unfortunately, I don't think that there were any cameras on when this happened, because it's 6 men in a very short period of time. What do you say as a lawyer about that?
Well, as a lawyer, I'm trained to be able to marshal both facts and law to move toward the conclusion that you want. And I've always been involved in civil rights and supported. I worked at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and I've done anti-death penalty work. So the law can be an extremely powerful tool to open up new avenues of making arguments. But the law is just one tool. Public policy, art, storytelling, narrative, witnessing, testifying, all of that has to work together. I want to sort of say a very dark but extremely important thing. Brian Stevenson and his amazing work at the Equal Justice Institute has brought light to the thousands of lynchings that have gone on. And there's an amazing memorial. When you see the memorial, 97% of them are men. And my mind goes to, well, what happens to the women? Well, the women are raped. And women of color, not just African-American women, but women and women of color have been raped in unfathomable numbers in this country. And the fact that there isn't a public monument to it, and there's not an academic project focused on unearthing it, and that there was no filmed in all of the domestics throughout the South, the Southwest, all of these women alone in a house. I told you this was deep. There is no memorial to this. There is no serious investigation to this. I'm committed to figuring out what we do. Either as a lawyer, as an activist, as a schmuck that's got resources and just wants to help. We need art. We need storytelling. We need people to tell stories about their grandmothers. It's going to be hard and raw, but to me, all of this will make us a better country. It's coming. I'm deeply optimistic. I think all kinds of terrible things about our society. But I see so much change. I see a conservative court. approve of anti-discrimination laws for sexual orientation, and I'm a gay man of an age that we were arrested in my 20s just for being gay. And now, according to the court, we're free.
Robert, when you were talking about the legions of women that have been raped in this country, I will work with you on that, because I think that there is, I think that there can be a nexus between public policy and art. And as you said, and it's true, when there are all these different forces coming together, just like all the forces that are coming together now on the protests, with just so many people that are coming forward about police brutality of African Americans. So let's talk about that.
That'd be
Let's
great.
talk about that. We're at the end, Robert.
No.
Yes, it's been so much fun talking to you, and thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you for your leadership and your joy. We really appreciate you, Molly. Take care.
Thanks, Robert. Next week's guests are Carrie Perloff, director, most recently at Arena with 1,000 Splendid Suns. She was artistic director at ACT for 26 years. Nahal Josie, who is an actor who was in Disgraced in Oklahoma. And Georgia Stitt, an accomplished composer with Arena for Snow Child. Her other musicals include Samantha Spade, Ace Detective, and Big Red Sun. Saturday night, we have our second film within our spring-summer season of Looking Forward at Arena Stage. We will be premiering the Voices of Now Inside Voices film. And this is from Arena Stage's Voices of Now ensembles. It's a visual time capsule of the experiences of over 130 young artists, including student artists from our area and international. You are not going to want to miss this. I just saw another cut of it this morning. All the young people did all the filming themselves in their homes, and it will take you directly into the heart of what young people are feeling right now in the middle of COVID-19. Today's gift of art is Kate Baldwin, who performed at Arena in South Pacific and the Music Man, and is a dear friend of mine. She's performing Light a Rose and Will I Ever Tell You from the Music Man, music director by Sarah Chisa, featuring the Quarantones, Andrew Parks, Bobby Underwood, Aaron Ramey, and Todd Burkish. So I'm really looking forward to hearing this tonight. I know you will be too. So let's go ahead and play Kate.
Light a rose, I'm home again, Rose, to get the sun back in the sky. Light a rose, I'm home again, Rose, about 1,000 kisses shy. Ding dong ding, I can hear the chapel bell chime. Ding dong ding, at the least suggestion, I'll pop the question. Light a rose, I'm home again, Rose, without a sweetheart to my name. Light a rose, now everyone knows that I am hoping you're the same. So here is my love song, not fancy or fine. Light a rose, oh, won't you be mine? Light a rose, oh, light a rose, oh, light a rose.
Dream of now, dream of then, dream of a love song that might have been. Do I love you? Oh yes, I love you, and I'll bravely sweet the